Hi everyone, and welcome to Creative Chelsea. If you like this video, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up or commenting below. If you want to see more of my videos, press the subscribe button and click on the bell for notifications. If you need any Stampin' Up! Products to make this card, you can visit my online store and the link is in the description box below. When you purchase Stampin' Up! Products through me, you can earn free products. Check out my current customer appreciation products on my blog. The link is listed below in the description box. Today I wanted to share with you a fun trick you can do with your die cuts, along with how to use the back-to-back bloom stamp set. So this fun stamp set is new in the January through June 2021 mini catalog. And the fun thing about it is that you can use both the detailed front of the stamp as well as the solid back. And so I'm going to show you today how I created this card using that technique. For the greeting, I've used the Happy Thoughts greetings, and this is also a stamp set in the January through June mini catalog. And I wanted to use the Just Wanted to send some happy thoughts your way. So let's go ahead and get started. So to get started for this card, we're going to be doing some watercoloring. And I like to use the Fluid 100 watercolor paper. And you can purchase this through Stampin' Up! It comes in sheets that are 5 inches by 7 inches. And so I've cut down on the 7-inch side to 3 3/4. And then I'm using that full 5-inch side here. I also have a card base in white cardstock, and it's just cut to your regular size, which is 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches and scored at 4 1/4. And then I have a scrap piece for my label and greeting. So we're going to start with the watercolor technique. Now Stampin' Up! Also offers some newer style designed water painters. And I really like using these. They have 3 different tips on them. So we have a very fine point, more of a brush tip point, and then a nice flat brush tip. And so we're going to use that flat brush tip. And I've just brought in a little piece of scrap paper just to protect my surface. And we're going to start by adding water, just clean water to this paper. And it's just going to soak in and it's going to start helping our colors bleed. So that's our first step. Before I do that, I just want to talk quickly about these stamps. So like I mentioned, there's a detailed front side, which is the side we normally would stamp on. But if we can flip that over, then we have a nice solid base that we can stamp on as well. And so I have gone ahead and added the large flower and the small flower upside down, so the back is the solid part we'll be stamping, and then the same with the leaf image from the stamp set. So once we get water on our paper, we do want to kind of move quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my ink pads. I'm going to be doing the flowers in Bumblebee ink, and then I'll be adding a little bit of color to the center in Calypso Coral. And I'll be doing that with a sponge dauber. All right, so we'll take that fat brush tip. I've got lots of water, and I'm just going to squeeze and spread the water all over my watercolor paper. Now, because we're using watercolor paper, it's not going to warp as much as if we were using just plain cardstock, but you will get a little bending, and that's totally normal. So the first image we're using is the solid, large stamp. And I'm just inking all that up in the Bumblebee. I'm taking my sponge dauber, picking up some Calypso Coral, and adding that to the center here. Next, I'm going to just go ahead and stamp this directly into that wet paper in the top right corner. And that's going to bleed out a little bit and create this really nice texture. And then let's do the same thing with the smaller flower. So ink it up with the Bumblebee and then add some Calypso Coral to the center. and then stamp that down into the opposite corner in the bottom right. So you're starting to see some of that bleeding happening. And just to get that going a little more, let's add some more water here. And that's just going to start bleeding that color out so we can get a nice image. Okay, so now that those flowers are done, we're going to do a couple leaves, and we're going to do these in Old Olive ink. And we're going to do that same technique where we take a little water. I'm just cleaning my brush to make sure I don't have a lot of water sitting, colored water sitting on it. And we're just going to get the area we want those leaves to be wet so that that color can bleed. So I'm going to ink up my stamp with the flat side and then stamp it into those wet spaces. And you'll see that it starts to bleed out. Go ahead and ink that up again and do another one. And then we'll do a couple on the bottom flower. And we're going to do this one kind of coming up and out a little bit, which is a little different from my first one. Okay, so you can see that those are starting to bleed a little bit, and you can again get your water painter and just kind of help those colors bleed out just slightly. Squeeze some water on there and bleed those colors out. Okay, so now we're going to clean our wide brush and add the cap back to it. And then you can pick up one of your other brush tips. And I'm going to go with the medium size, so more of a brush tip instead of a fine point. And I'm going to pick up some of this Bermuda Bay color, and I'm going to add it into all of my open sections. So first I'm going to add some water into those areas to get that paper nice and wet again, and then pick up some color and then just start adding that all around. So this nice blue color is really going to set that yellow and that green apart from the card. So it's really going to help those colors stand out. And you're just kind of adding it painterly to your card. And you can squeeze as you're applying if you want to add more water in a certain area, or if you want it to be more dry so you can get a richer blue color, you can do that too. And then maybe up in the corner, add a little bit of blue up there. Down in the corner down here. I'm going to go ahead and clean this, get some of that color out of my brush, and then just add a little more water up here at the top just to kind of blend those colors in a little bit more. You can always pick up more yellow or green too, if you're wanting to get some more of those colors into your card as well. So I do get ink into my lid by closing my ink pad and squeezing the top and bottom together. That's going to give me a little more ink there so that I can pick up and add a little darker areas here. So a little darker, maybe along the edges. Pick some spots to make a little darker sections. Okay. All right, so that is ready now for us to let it dry. So make sure to clean your brush, and you just do that again by squeezing and letting that color run out of the brush tip. You may get a little bit of staining on the fibers of the brush, and that's totally normal. So place that off to the side and let that dry. So next we're going to stamp our greeting, and we're going to do this fun dry embossed bevel edge to our label. So I've placed the greeting on one of my clear blocks, and I'm using StazOn ink, and I'm just going to go ahead and ink this up. What nice juicy ink on there, and then stamp that in the center of my scrap paper. Nice good pressure. And then I'm going to get my label, and I'm using the Tasteful label dies, and I really love these dies for this technique. So I'm going to grab this longer curvy die here, and I'm going to add it to my paper with a little bit of washi tape. This is just going to hold it in place. And I want to make sure that I place it on the outside edge here, so not on the inside. Make sure it's all centered in there and looks good. So I'm going to run this through my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. And then I'm going to leave the paper in the die, and when I come back I'll show you how to do the dry embossing. So I've gone ahead and cut this out, and I'm going to remove the die and the paper, keep it inside, and we're going to flip it over. Then you're going to take your pickup tool, and it comes with a couple different attachments. So there's a pointy and a paddle side, and then it comes with a stylus. And you can either use the large or the small. I'm going to use the large stylus, and you're just going to find the edge of your die cut and run the stylus around that edge. Now you could use something like wax paper or something here to make it run smoother along that cardstock. That doesn't really bother me so much, that little scratching sound. So you just want to make sure that you get a nice deep emboss here. So go all the way around. And then when you remove it, you have this really beautiful embossed label. So let's go back to our watercolor piece. If it's not completely dry yet, you will want to help speed that along by using a heat tool. So I did just use a heat tool to dry this more quickly. And now that it's dry, we can use some StazOn ink and the front side of those stamps. So go ahead, and you're going to want to clean them. And I have my Simply Chamois here, which I think is just a really great cleaning tool. So I have my StazOn, and I'm starting with that large flower, just inking it up really nicely. And then I'm going to stamp it over the large flower that we did with our watercolor effect. Now, watercolor paper has a tendency, because it's bumpy, to not give you a really good image. So you do want to make sure you're working with well-inked ink pads, so you have a lot of ink on there. And then give it good pressure so that you can get a nice clean image. And then let's do the same thing with the small flower. And then grab some scrap paper. You might be stamping off a little bit, and ink up your leaf. And then do the same thing for your leaves. All right, so there's our image. Down here I shifted the stamp a little bit so you can see a little bleeding. What I think I'm going to do is just bring my label down just slightly so that I can cover up that mistake just a little bit. Okay, so if you ever run into little mistakes like that, just find something to kind of cover it up so you're not throwing away your all your hard work. Okay, so now we can put this card together. And I've got that card base. I'm just going to go ahead and fold that in half. And I'm going to use a bone folder to make a nice crease. And then I'm going to add my watercolor paper with some strong adhesive. This is just going to help it, because I'm using thick cardstock, this is just going to help it kind of lay flat. Then you can just go ahead and add this to the center of your card base. Just make sure you have about even all the way around. And then we're going to add our greeting with some dimensionals. And the dimensionals are just going to help it pop up from the card base so that the embossing we added doesn't go flat on us. So it's going to help that embossing stay nice. And then, like I said, I'm going to bring this one down just a little bit to cover up that mistake and try to place that right in the center of my card. And then next I'm going to add some of these pearls to my card just to add a little bit of bling. And you can place these anywhere. I'm going to place a large one up here and a medium one, and then a small one kind of in a triangle, and then maybe two down here. So let's do a large, here, and let's do a medium as well. Something like that. And that card is all done. So just a couple thoughts. You may notice that here I have a little more spotting than I did on my first card. And the reason that happened was because I did not add as much water to the paper before I stamped it. So I'm not sure if you noticed when I was doing the stamping of the leaves, how they came out nice and clean. And that's because I added water right before I stamped them. So you don't want it to be soaking wet, but you do want your paper to be wet so that it can absorb that ink color. And so I just did not have an even absorption of color there. But every time you do these cards, you're going to get a little different look because of that watercolor technique. So I hope you enjoyed watching me create these cards today. If you're interested in seeing close-up images or getting written instructions, you can visit my blog at creativechelsea.com. Thanks so much for watching. Have a creative day. Bye.